Hey, welcome to the Treatment-Free Beekeeping Podcast. I'm Solomon, I'm your host, and today I'm going to be addressing a question that somebody had on the Facebook group about what do you do with a swarm that you've caught in a trap? How do you move it? How do you transfer it to your equipment? What do you do? So right next to me I have an example of a swarm that I caught a couple weeks ago. So I'm just going to use this as an example because one of the first things you need to do with a swarm is wait till they're bringing in pollen. Now you look at this bee right here, got a nice load of pollen on that one. You'll see them coming in with pollen. It's late in the afternoon, so there will be less pollen. You'll see more pollen in the morning, just as the new flowers come out. But when you see pollen coming in, there's a couple more. When you see pollen coming in, you'll know that the hive has started to either raise bees or prepare to raise bees. That's called brooding. And when pollen's coming in, that's what they're doing, because if you remember your basic bee biology, after the nurse bees finish feeding the larvae royal jelly, they start feeding a mixture of honey and pollen. And so since they didn't bring any pollen with them in the swarm, most likely, every once in a while you'll see a swarm with a bee with pollen in it, but that's uncommon. But since they have brought in pollen, you know that they're getting ready to make baby bees. And once they're doing that, once the queen has started laying and some brood has started hatching, then the chances of them absconding and leaving your swarm trap will reduce to near zero. Now, if you start messing with a hive immediately, you have possible issues with absconding. The colony might leave, the swarm might bug out because your trap has been discovered to be a hazardous area, and so they're not going to want to stick around very long. And the same goes with things like if in the afternoon, if you get a lot of heat on the hive. You can see this hive I've put in the shade in the afternoon. If the hive gets too warm in the afternoon, they might abscond in the first day or two. Another thing you can do is move the swarm far away from where you caught it. In this case, this swarm was caught about 5 miles away across the valley, and I brought it over here the next day. I caught it in the box and then let the bees all come in the next day, and then the next evening I brought it home. And they will be completely lost from where their original location was. They won't know how to get home, they won't know the area, they won't know where to go, so they'll probably stay. In my case, this hive is a 10-frame nuke that I built myself about 6 or 8 years ago. You can see it's getting kind of old, cracking here and there, and I didn't put good joints on it, so it's not a great plan. I should have built it better, but here it is. Anyway, now you can see my box. You can't see this if you're listening on the podcast, but the bottom is attached. It's a regular 10-frame box. There are frames inside of it. I can just transfer. I don't have to transfer the hive to another box. I can leave it in this box. I can stick a super on top of it. I can stick a whole bunch of supers on top of it. And technically, I don't ever have to transfer this colony to another hive. Not everybody has that, and so if you have a swarm trap design where you need to remove the bees, what you're going to do is the way that I do it with some of my other traps, unlike this one, and this one too, if I need to reuse the trap, is I'll take the hive to the location where I want it to be. In this case, I'm setting up a new apiary, and so I'm taking all of my swarms from this year and setting them in that new apiary. And then in a few weeks following that, once they've gotten totally settled in, they're making new brood, they are totally locked into their location, then you can treat it like any other hive. You can transfer the frames into different boxes. Basically, I just will take this box and I will move it to the side. I'll put the new bottom board, a new box and whatever on there. I'll transfer the frames over. The entrance might be different, but they will figure that out pretty quickly. And then when I'm done, I just close the thing up. And the bees will adapt pretty quickly. Now there's generally going to be some bees left over in the empty box, so I'm just going to turn that over, shake it up and down, shake it real good in front of the entrance of the new box, and the bees will find their way back in. Even the queen, if she happens to be in the box, she will be shaken out and she will most likely find her way back in. If not, and something happens to her, then hopefully they'll make a new one. Ooh, there's some red pollen. That's the first load of red pollen I've seen this year, actually. So as you can see, there's not really a whole lot to transferring a swarm to a new hive. If you have a frameless or foundationless swarm trap design, you might have some problems with a comb that's built improperly in there. And especially with frameless, you'll have to do some sort of cutout and move that comb to another hive. I've actually another hive just right down there that I had left an empty space in it so that there would be plenty of room for the bees to get in. It's an odd entrance. Anyway, so there was a frame missing in there, and they decided to start building comb where there's no frame. So I have to go in there, probably not today because it's a little cool. I don't want them to make them upset. But tomorrow when it's warm, I'll go in there and I will do a little cutout. I'll take that comb out of that empty space and rubber band it into an empty frame, and then just put it back in the box and they'll be good to go. But generally speaking, once a swarm has moved into a box and set up shop and you see pollen coming in, you can pretty much treat them like any other hive. You can move them around, you can transfer them between boxes, you can even split them if you want, or rob brood to use for nukes. Whatever you want to do, they are, at this point, they've set up shop and they're good to go, and you don't have to worry about anything. You just treat them like a normal hive. That's all for this vignette. This has been the Treatment Free Beekeeping Podcast. Like and share the video or the podcast, or leave a review if you can. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. There are also comment sections on the podcast website at tfb.podbean.com where the podcasts are posted. So if you'd like to leave comments or questions there, I can answer those too. If you haven't found the Treatment Free Beekeeping group on Facebook, Treatment Free Beekeepers, go check that out. It's still growing. We've got almost 28,000 people now. So have fun keeping bees, because it is fun. And if you're not having fun, maybe you're doing something wrong. I'll see you next time.